Hey, this is Kez.
And Violet.
And this is Nightmares at Midnight.
Welcome to the Himalayas! Abominable! Can you believe that? Do I look abominable to you?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next episode. And if you haven't guessed it already, we are talking about the Abominable Snowman, or as it's properly known, the Yeti. I have Violet here with me.
Yellow.
Because you guys have requested that she be on. It's more fun for her to be on for me too. So here she is. Just a little bit of housekeeping to go over real quick. Last week was Thanksgiving and my surgery. The surgery went well. Thanksgiving went really well too. My husband cooked for us. I had prepped a lot of stuff for him, so he was able to cook a little bit smoother. In our family, with me having my culinary degree, I'm the one that commonly cooks the meals. So to have me down on the biggest meal holiday of the year was a little bit rough, but that's okay. He did a great job cooking. One thing I wanted to say real quick is that I apologize for my inability to pronounce words, especially when I'm reading. It's hard because I just try to get through the word and I end up pronouncing it incorrectly. For example, the last episode about the red dwarf where I was pronouncing the rogue, whatever, that word, I pronounced it incorrectly, and that was pointed out to me. So I just want to apologize, especially if it's in a different language like French, or like in this episode, it'll be in Tibet and different languages. I have a very difficult time with that, so bear with me as I just try to get through that.
What we're watching this week is Andor.
Oh yeah, we watched the last few episodes of Andor because we like Star Wars in this household. And we watched the last episode of Lord of the Rings. Violet and I watched My Sister's Keeper. That one's, I think it's from like 2005 or 2009. It's got Cameron Diaz in it. We're not going to talk a whole lot about that one because it was super sad.
We cried.
A lot. The whole movie.
Pretty much.
So we're just going to move on from that. So that's about what we've been watching. It snowed a lot here over the weekend, so that's nice. It's negative 11 today, so it's freezing cold outside. Welcome to Alaska. And speaking of snow, we are just going to jump right into the Abominable Snowman. As a busy mom, it can be hard to take care of yourself. Even harder when you need to leave the house alone for that self-care. My friend Jennifer has a solution for that. She offers in-home massage in the Wasilla and Palmer, Alaska area. Her business is called Anchored in Relaxation, and you can find her on Facebook and Square Appointments or by emailing anchoredinrelaxation@gmail.com. Mention you heard about her here for a free peppermint scalp massage added on to any massage. Okay, so Violet was not here for when I did a lot of the research on the Yeti. I have to be honest, I did not know the major differences between the Yeti and the Bigfoot, but I'm curious to hear what Violet's thought and differences they are. So what do you think the difference between a Yeti and the Abominable Snowman and Bigfoot are? What do you think?
Okay, so I think that the Abominable Snowman and the Yeti's differences are not much, actually. I think Yetis are more living inside of mountains and caves and high snow tops in like Mount Everest somewhere up there. And that's pretty much it for the Yeti and the Abominable Snowman. But the Abominable Snowman and the Bigfoot, on the other hand, here is the Abominable Snowman has whitish hair, I think, and then the Bigfoot has black or brown hair instead of white because of living in forests, swamps, and bogs. And there's technically those same differences for the Yeti and the Bigfoot.
Okay, so we'll go over the differences so that way we can all learn that too. But the main differences is the locations of where they're from. The Yeti is the oldest legend of the bunch. So there's The Yeti, the Abominable Snowman is the same thing. We'll talk about how that name came about. And then there's Bigfoot. So we'll talk about the differences between them as well. The lore is that it's like a man-like beast in the Himalayas. And it has its roots in the pre-Buddhist religion. The Lepcha people recognized a supernatural glacier being, as they called it, as one of their hunting gods and the ruler of all the forest's creatures. It wasn't until later that an early version of the term Yeti emerged. Most experts believe it derives from a Sherpa word, possibly Yetta, meaning small man-like animal, or Meti, meaning bear. I think this is ironic given what we learn later. The Yeti starred as the antagonist of many cautionary folk tales shared by the Sherpa people, and in their legends, the creature was depicted as an ape-like man who left large tracks in the snow. The Yeti was adopted into Tibetan Buddhism, where it is considered a non-human animal. Several stories feature Yetis becoming helpers and disciples of religious figures. In Tibet, images of Yetis are paraded and occasionally worshipped as guardians against evil spirits. However, hearing or seeing one is often considered a bad omen. In 1832, James Princep's Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal published trekker B.H. Hodgson's account of his experiences in northern Nepal. His local guides spotted a tall bipedal creature covered with long dark hair, which seemed to flee in fear. Hodgson concluded it was an orangutan. An early record of reported footprints appeared in 1899 in Lawrence Waddell's, I think that's how you pronounce it, Among the Himalayas. Waddell reported his guide's description of a large ape-like creature that left the prints, which Waddell thought were made by a bear. Keep that noted. Waddell heard stories of bipedal ape-like creatures, but wrote that none, however, of the many Tibetans I have interrogated on the subject could ever give me an authentic case. On the most superficial investigation, it always resolved into something that somebody heard tell of, so just stories. The phrase, the Abominable Snowman, appeared relatively recently and was born out of a messy mistranslation. In 1921, a contributor to an Indian English language newspaper interviewed explorers returning from the British Mount Everest Renaissance expedition. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. That year, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Bury led the 1921 British Mount Everest reconnaissance expedition, which he chronicled in Mount Everest, The Reconnaissance, 1921, and in the book, Howard Bury includes an account of crossing the Lagpa La at 21,000 feet. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm assuming it's a mountain pass, where he found footprints that he believed were probably caused by a large loping gray wolf, which in the soft snow formed double tracks rather like those of a barefooted man. He adds that his Sherpa guides at once volunteered that the tracks must be that of the wild man of the snows, which is what they called it there, to which they gave the name Meto Kangmi. Meto translate as man-bear, and Kangmi translates as snowman. The writer got the last half of that equation right, but misinterpreted Meto as filthy. So instead of writing filthy snowman, he decided he liked the sound of abominable better, and the nickname stuck. This prompted the government of Nepal to issue regulations for Yeti hunting expeditions, including pay the Nepalese government for a permit, which is 5,000 rupees, roughly $1,100 in today's currency, photograph or capture the Yeti but not kill it. Turn it over to the Nepalese officials, any information or photos of the Yeti sightings.
So I think that it is pretty interesting because it made me think of the movie about the little girl who I think she lived in Japan, I couldn't tell, but she loved the violin and this Abominable Snowman.
Is that what it's called?
Abominable maybe? I'm not sure.
I think that's what it's called.
But Abominable is about a Yeti who gets caught or / captured by these scientists, and they find out he's a Yeti and see him as a big importance, but then he escapes the facility. That's what I would call it, at least, a facility. And runs onto this girl's apartment roof. The next day, she goes up to the roof to play her violin. The Yeti shuffles around and spooks her. So that's kind of like the little first part spoiler for you if you have not watched it.
Okay. It reminded me of the Monsters, Inc. Yeti, like the one that we used in the intro. And I have to say, that's probably my favorite intro of all of the episodes that we've done so far. I can't make it through listening to that intro without laughing.
She's giggling like a little girl.
Because I think it's funny. So anyways, the key evidence for the existence of the Yeti was the photo of a footprint taken by British explorer Eric Shipton in 1951. So this is the interview of it, so I'll be quoting that. There's another person I'll be quoting later on. I read through, there was a lot on National Geographic, so I read a lot there as well. On 19 of March 1954, the Daily Mail printed an article which described expedition teams obtaining hair specimens from what was alleged to be a Yeti scalp found in the Pangboche Monastery. I don't know if that's pronounced right. Again, I apologize. I can barely speak English, let alone any other languages. The hairs were black to dark brown in color in dim light and fox red in sunlight. The hair was analyzed by Professor Frederick Wood Jones, an expert in human and comparative anatomy. During the study, the hairs were bleached, cut into sections, and analyzed microscopically. The research consisted of taking microphotographs of the hairs and comparing them with hairs from known animals such as bears and orangutans. Jones concluded that the hairs were not actually from a scalp. He contended that while some animals do have a ridge of hair extending from the plate to the back, no animals have a ridge, as in the Pangboche scalp, running from the base of the forehead across the plate and ending at the nape of the neck. Jones was unable to pinpoint exactly the animal from which the Pangboche hairs were taken. He was, however, convinced that the hairs were not from a bear or anthropoid ape, but instead from the shoulder of a coarse-haired hoofed animal. So that disproved that it was a Yeti scalp to begin with. Then, Daniel Taylor, who is the author of Yeti, The Ecology of a Mystery, has been searching for signs of this abominable snowman in the Himalayas pretty much since he was a child. So this guy has a hypothesis as to what the Yeti actually is, but I don't know if I really believe what he said is the Yeti. So talking from his home in West Virginia is where the interview took place. Taylor explains what he thinks made the human-like footprint, how his search eventually led to the creation of a national park, and why, in an age where we have become disconnected from nature, we have a deep need to believe in mysteries. So I attached the photo from National Geographic. I got approval to post that. That was taken on the Menlung Glacier, west of Mount Everest on the Nepal-Tibet border. Shipton and Michael Ward were searching for an alternative Everest route when they came across the prints. Shipton was one of the most highly respected Everest explorers, so if he is bringing back a print, it was a real print. Nobody ever questioned that. But what is it? So what was captivating about the prints, according to Daniel Taylor, was that they were really sharp. The snow was hard, so the photo looks like a sort of plaster. And then the second feature was that the prints look like a human footprint, but with a thumb. So you get the primate-like feeling, but a humanoid at the same time. Its enormous size was 13 inches, also suggests a magnificent humanoid, a King Kong type of image. And, of course, the media grabbed at it. So the most important one was the Daily Mail in 1954. That's when Yeti fever took off, though the name for the Yeti was given as the Abominable Snowman. The American oilman Tom Slick mounted several expeditions. One of them had 500 porters and spent 6 months in the field. They even took along bloodhounds to track the scent. The World Book Encyclopedia then got captivated by the Yeti and approached Edmund Hillary. He had been somewhat of a believer in the 1950s, but he said we shouldn't go just Yeti searching. We should study how people live at a high altitude. So they built a house at 19,000 feet and did a bunch of experiments on how humans acclimatize, which means how they adjust to that high altitude. So they're the ones who first made the distinction between the Sherpa belief in the Yeti and the Yeti as a mysterious humanoid that lives in the mountains. So one of the questions that was asked in the interview was, describe how you first became fascinated by the Yeti. Before we answer how Daniel Taylor answered that question, I'm curious, Violet, when was the first time you became fascinated by the Yeti?
I think it was because in Rhinelander, where we used to live, they had this almost bigger than me, about my head size bigger. It was a shape of a Bigfoot, and I thought that was interesting.
Oh, you're talking at the moonlighting. There's a bar, and there's a silhouette of that Bigfoot thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Rhinelander, there's a bar. I don't remember the name of that street, but there's a bar there that has a silhouette with a Bigfoot leaning up against the gate. If you're from Rhinelander, you know where we're talking about, but if not, it's just a big, 6-foot silhouette of Bigfoot. So that intrigued you?
Oh yeah, I thought it was interesting, and then when they sent out the movie Abominable on Hulu, after I watched that, I thought it was really cool and stuff. Or the Missing Link on Netflix.
Ooh, yeah, that one is cool too.
Yeah, that really...
Okay. So Daniel Taylor, he answered it with, when the question was, describe how you first became fascinated by the Yeti. He answered with, my grandmother came from Cincinnati. My grandfather was a cowboy in Kansas. They met in medical school in Kansas City in hard times and decided to go to India as medical missionaries. In 1914, they ended up in an area near India's western border with Nepal. So dense, rich jungle made famous by Jim Corbett in books like Man-Eaters of Kumayan? I don't know. I came into the picture in 1946 when my own parents went to India to take over running a hospital. It was a fabulous childhood. My grandparents had bought a property at the top of a mountain near the old British hill station of Mazuri. It was a lovely old compound with jungle all around. One Saturday, during the monsoon, I saw the famous picture of the Yeti's footprints in a magazine. I knew most of the jungle animals, so when the curator at the British Museum said he thought these were prints of the langur monkey, I said, this is outrageous. I know the langur monkey, bouncing on the tin roof all the time. Some other animal must have made this mysterious human-like footprint. I must have gone to my father and grandfather, and they said, Danny, that's the Yeti. I said, what is the Yeti? And they said, the Yeti is a wild man that lives out in the mountains, and that's his footprint. That's when the spark was lit. I can imagine, too, that if I saw the footprint and lived there, I would just want to be hunting it all the time. So the next part of the interview was, your own search eventually became focused on a wild area of Nepal known as the Barun Valley. Put us on the ground and explain your hypothesis about what the Yeti actually is. So this is Daniel Taylor's hypothesis. So due to its microclimate, the Barun Valley brings in more moisture than any other valley in the Himalayan system. That means the Barun is really dense jungle with a lot of rain. That is why people didn't settle it. So if you're looking for the last readout of the wild, it is this valley. It is so dense that very few people have actually entered it, even the locals who live on its edge. I was advised to go there by the King of Nepal, who said, if you want to go to the wildest place where the Yeti might be, it is in the Barun. And when the king says that, you go, because he really knows his country. And once I got in that valley, I found footprints. I'd seen footprints before, but these were fresh, and I had no doubt I had found the Yeti. The question was, what made them? So a local hunter that he worked with said that he thought what he'd found was a tree bear, and I'd never heard of a tree bear in this region. Suddenly, we had an explanation for where the thumb came from. A bear that lives in a tree forces an inner digit down so it can make an opposable grip. Normal bears cannot make an opposable grip, but if you're spending a lot of time in the tree, you train that one thumb to grab a branch or break bamboo. So I spent 2 years trying to figure out whether it was a species, a subspecies, or a juvenile bear. So Daniel Taylor believes that the Yeti footprints were produced by an Asian black bear. The deep mystery at our core is that we want to be connected to the great beyond, and we need symbols to help us understand the connection. That's why we believe in God or angels or the Loch Ness Monster. So throughout human history and across human cultures, we have developed messengers from the great beyond. Ultimately, that's what the Yeti is. So in 2004, Henry Gee, editor of the journal Nature, mentioned the Yeti as an example of folk belief deserving further study. The discovery that Homo floresiensis, I did not do good in biology, clearly. This survived until so very recently in geological terms. It makes it more likely that stories of other mythical human-like creatures, such as Yetis, are founded on grains of truth.
In early December 2007, American television presenter Joshua Gates and his team, Destination Truth, reported finding a series of footprints in the Everest region of Nepal resembling descriptions of a Yeti. Each of the footprints measured 33 centimeters / 13 inches in length, with 5 toes that measured a total of 25 centimeters 9.8 inches across. Casts were made of the prints for further research. The footprints were examined by Jeffrey Meldrum, who believes them to be too morphologically accurate to be fake or man-made, before changing his mind after making further investigations. Later in 2009,
Gates presented hair samples with a forensic analyst concluding that the hair contained an unknown DNA sequence. On 25th of July 2008, the BBC reported that hairs collected in the remote Garo Hills of northeast India by Dipu Marak had been analyzed at Oxford Brookes University in the UK by primatologist Anna Nakaris and microscopy expert John Wells. These initial tests were inconclusive, and ape conservation expert Ian Redmond told the BBC that there was similarity between the cuticle pattern of these hairs and specimens collected by Edmund Hillary during Himalayan expeditions in the 1950s, and donated to the Oxford University Museum of Natural History and announced planned DNA analysis. This analysis has since revealed that the hair came from the Himalayan Goral. A group of Chinese scientists and explorers in 2010 proposed to renew searches in the Shenanjia Forestry District of Hubei Province, which was the site of the expeditions in the 1970s and 1980s. At a 2011 conference in Russia, participating scientists and enthusiasts declared having 95% evidence of the Yeti's existence. However, this claim was disputed later. American anthropologist and anatomist Jeffrey Meldrum, who was present during the Russian expedition, claimed the evidence found was simply an attempt by local officials to drum up publicity.
A Yeti was reportedly captured in Russia in December 2011. Initially, the story claimed that a hunter reported having a bear-like creature trying to kill one of his sheep, but after he fired his gun, the creature ran into the forest on its 2 legs. The story then claimed the Border Patrol soldiers captured a hairy 2-legged female creature similar to a gorilla that ate meat and vegetation. This was later revealed to be as a hoax or possibly a publicity stunt for charity.
Good job.
In April 2019, an Indian Army mountaineering expedition team claimed to have spotted mysterious Yeti footprints measuring 81 by 38 centimeters, 32 by 15 inches technically, near the Magalu base camp.
Good job. Some proposed explanations. So the misidentification of the Himalayan wildlife has been proposed as an explanation for some Yeti sightings, including the Chute, a langur monkey, living at lower altitudes, or the Tibetan blue bear, or the Himalayan brown bear, also known as the Himalayan red bear. So the Abominable Snowman and Yeti are basically different names for the same legend, but Bigfoot is a different beast altogether. Like the Yeti, Sasquatch, later dubbed Bigfoot, is believed to be a large, shaggy primate that walks upright like a man. The main difference between the two mythological animals is their location. So the Abominable Snowman and the Yeti are the same thing, and the Sasquatch and the Bigfoot are the same thing.
Yes, apparently. While the Yeti belongs to Asia, Bigfoot is thought to be a native to North America.
Specifically, the Pacific Northwest. Tales of ape-like wild men inhabiting the region can be traced back to indigenous communities. Sasquatch is derived from sesquak, a Hulkomelem word meaning wild man, but the name Bigfoot is a 20th century original invention. Once again, we have a creative journalist to thank for the popular title. In 1958, a man discovered large, unidentifiable footprints left near his bulldozer in Bluff Creek, California. He made a cast of the prints and got himself featured in the local paper. By this time, people in the community were referring to the mysterious owner of the massive tracks as Bigfoot. The writer of the article spelled it Bigfoot, and the rest is history. Oh, Bigfoot as one word. Despite originating thousands of miles apart, some modern-day believers suspect that the creatures belong to one species. One popular theory is that Bigfoot and the Abominable Snowman / Yeti are Gigantopithecus, a polar bear-sized ape native to southern Asia, believed to have gone extinct 300,000 years ago. While chances are slim that the species migrated to North America with its Homo sapien relatives, that hasn't stopped many cryptozoology enthusiasts from wanting to believe. So as far as movies or TV or merch,
We have 2 Scooby-Doo episodes that are named Be Cool, Scooby-Doo, and That's Snow Ghost, which came out in 1970.
and then 1964, there's the animated TV series Johnny Quest, and that featured a Yeti in the episode Monsters in the Monastery. And then in The Mummy, the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, they made a small cameo there.
Yeah, small scene. I think it was when they were in the mountains.
The Snow Creature in 1954. This is the earliest known to me Yeti movie. A Yeti is captured in the Himalayas and then brought to Los Angeles. The creature escapes, but things don't really end well for it. And then Smallfoot, the animated movie. That one has Channing Tatum as the main character. That one came out in 2018.
The movie that we talked about earlier, Abominable or Missing Link, which both came out in 2019.
Of course, Monsters, Inc. we talked about, and Monsters University. And then there is a horror movie called Rage of the Yeti that is out and has Yetis in it. And then, of course, the infamous Bumble from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. If you look up merch for Yetis, the name specifically, you're gonna get like the thermos and cooler brand. But if you look up the Abominable Snowman, you get a lot of Bumble stuff. So Etsy has other Bumble and Abominable Snowman products like ornaments and hoodies and earrings and so much more. So you can look on Redbubble or on Zazzle. There's t-shirts that have different Yetis and Abominable Snowman on it.
I think that's all we have for the Abominable Snowman and the Yeti and the Bigfoot.
Hopefully that gave you a little bit of an image of what the difference is. Like I said, when I started, I didn't quite know the difference between, the Yeti and the Abominable Snowman and the Sasquatch and Bigfoot. I thought they were different breeds of the same species, but I think this cleared that up a little bit for me. Next week, Wow, we're already into December. We're going to continue with the winter or snow creatures, myths, lores. We did discuss that for sure. Krampus is going to be released my birthday, December 21st, the winter solstice. That is on a Wednesday this year, so we're going to go ahead and release that one on my birthday, so that'll be a nice birthday present for me.
Maybe we could do one on my birthday since my birthday is January 10th.
Yeah, let's see what day your birthday falls on.
Because in January...
It's a Tuesday, so we could do it just as a belated birthday for you.
Sure.
Which one would you want to do for your birthday?
I don't know. I'll have to figure that out.
Okay, well, we'll keep them posted, and then we can do another one for your birthday.
Yeah.
Okay?
Both birthday specials.
Speaking of birthday special, if you are listening to this episode and you are a common fan of ours, please drop us a note, a message on Instagram or an email of when your birthday is, so that way we can shout out our fans and their birthdays and let them know that we care about you guys too. So thank you for tuning in, and make sure you're listening to us on the different spots that you can, which are Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Index, TuneIn Plus Alexa, and Podcast Addict, and on our website, which is nightmaresatmidnightpodcast.buzzsprout.com. If you're not following us already on Instagram, it's at Nightmares at Midnight Podcast, and Facebook is Nightmares at Midnight Podcast as well. And then, like I said, feel free to email us, let us know, your critiques, what your favorite episode is, and please share us to your friends. Our email is nightmaresatmidnightpodcast@gmail.com. So thanks for listening, and as always,
Catch us next time.
Seeking occupational therapy services for your child in the Wasilla and Palmer area, and you're on a waiting list? Clinic setting just isn't cutting it? Too many options or not enough? Wild Free Kids OT may be your answer. With no wait lists and extensive training, experience working with children and adolescents with behavior issues, we offer mobile, community, and nature-based OT where it matters most. You get real results, learning alongside your child and without compromising your way of life. Give us a call at 907-215-4438 or check us out on Facebook or online, Wild Free Kids OT.